This week, we are pleased to continue the discussion on education and, most importantly, outcomes. In our forum, Innovation Generation, Connecting Students to Jobs, this forum is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase as a part of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Series. Please help me thank J.P. Morgan Chase for their support. Thank you. Our panel today reflects passion for education, getting things done, and making sure students are on the right path to succeed in the jobs of the 21st century. We are pleased to welcome Scott Reeves, Executive Director of Westerville City Schools, Lynn Elfner, CEO Emeritus of the Ohio Academy of Science, and Maggie Feldman, a senior at Reynoldsburg High School, participating in the Innovation Generation program. Happy to have you here. Rich Rosen, chair of Columbus State Community College, will start off with a few comments to set the stage and then lead the conversation. Please welcome all of our speakers. Rich, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First, it's great to see so many people here who are already experts in the innovation generation, and for those of you who aren't, if you came here today to hear about a new school program, that's not why you're here. You're here because you're going to hear about a workforce initiative that's made possible by a change in the way we are going to do school. And I'm joined by three people who will speak to that topic in an expert way. First, our real expert is Maggie. She's a young lady who's very much in the midst of her journey, and she has a lot to share what that journey is like. And then our second expert is responsible for creating the supportive environment that's able to allow every student with every interest to be able to thrive in their community. And finally, we're joined by an expert who has spent pretty much his entire career building science and technology literacy, combining it with entrepreneurialism, so that we can build the kind of companies that have made Columbus great. But before they share their ideas, let me share a couple of mine. You know, when people talk about education in the future, it's really common to talk about numbers and gaps, like 60% of the students will need a post-secondary credential to be in the workforce in the future, or America ranks in the middle of nearly every measure that happens globally about academic achievement. Some people talk about the spending or the investments that we make in the United States in education don't seem to be paying off in terms of outcomes. At Columbus State, we're very interested and concerned about the type of debt that students mount up, and so that they leave college with a mountain that's high enough that they have to spend the rest of their life paying it off as they start thinking about their first job. Those are all true, they're all alarming statistics, but if there's anything that I've learned in my own career, it's that problems never, ever exist in isolation. They surface through a combination of factors, and when I think about the facts I just talked about and the ones that you'll hear about today, they're sort of like a perfect storm that we can talk about. First, yeah, the U.S. is losing ground, but it's partly because other countries are getting better and getting better faster. The time frame between idea and company is getting shorter. It's enabled by technology and communications infrastructure, but we're realizing that technology and speed have its downsides. The cloud and high-speed communications is good for creating an app on my iPhone, but it's really good for an identity thief for stealing millions and millions of records in a heartbeat. And for many of us who create and trust those companies, we don't even know exactly how they operate and what makes them work, so we don't know how to make judgments about that. The rate of technology is an aid to teaching. It's an obvious solution. It's moving faster than many teachers can absorb it because they weren't trained to use it, and for the most part, those technologies didn't exist when they were being trained. So keep in mind that most of the teachers that we're trying to help and guide our kids are already in the workforce. So just as problems don't exist in isolation, solutions don't either. So in the past, a K-12 district would do its best to prepare a student. That student would walk across a stage and get their diploma, and then it would be pretty much the control of their own destiny to navigate what they wanted to do in the world. Colleges would do their best to help by having a selection of degrees and credentials, but they wouldn't necessarily know the student that they were receiving other than by their application and maybe a couple of reference letters. And they might only have a distant relationship with employers who might visit their campuses once or twice a year for a career fair. And employers could talk about the jobs that they need to fill, but their daily attention would be controlled by what the media says about them. Lightspeed communication, their performance or lack thereof, would keep all of their attention. And despite their best intentions, being closely integrated with educators would be a distraction that businesses couldn't afford. So if it took 100 applicants to find the 2 that they needed, so be it. But imagine what would happen if K-12 teachers and college instructors worked with each other long before graduating students walked across that stage. What would it be if they were building a bridge instead of a doorway to an unknown future for that new student? Now imagine what would happen if multiple districts and colleges could keep the pride of their own institutions, the personalities of their communities, but also found ways to share resources so that they didn't have to keep reinventing a wheel that's already been built. And imagine if employers worked with educators in a seamless way that careers were previewed, connected to skills so that teachers and students understood the relevance of what they were teaching. Now, we aren't there yet, but since 2011, a thing called the Central Ohio Compact has established common ground for institutions to work together. The aim of the Compact is to build a system of career pathways 9 through 14 that would be aligned with real labor market demands in this area. Innovation Generation, the thing we'll be talking about here today, is funded by a $14.5 million Ohio Straight A Fund grant. It's a program authorized by the Ohio General Assembly, signed into law by Governor Kasich last year, and it's an unprecedented collaboration among 15 Central Ohio school districts, numerous partners, many of which are here today, who have stepped up to provide technical assistance and financial support. It focuses on classroom and industry experience at the same time in 4 sectors: IT, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and robotics, and business logistics. And last spring, students were able to enroll in one of 6 district programs. You'll hear about some of those here today. Let me give you a quick sense of the capacity being built at an institution I'm quite proud of and privileged to be a part of, Columbus State. At Columbus State, 33 arts and sciences and career technical courses are being digitized for web-based course delivery in high schools during the 2014-15 year. It'll afford students the opportunity to enroll in college credit while still in high school. 30 career technical sections will be delivered in 13 Central Ohio school districts as dual enrollment. These courses are foundational courses that ultimately lead to credentials and associate degrees. In the 4 grant-designated industry sectors, health, advanced manufacturing, business logistics, and IT, 21 certificates and credentials will be available for students to initiate and earn by the time they leave high school. This is not a flavor of the month idea, folks. This is an idea that builds on what we all know is possible and something that we have to do. But it takes groups of leaders in K-12, leaders in higher education, and leaders in business willing to take that step together and be on it for the long haul. And we have 3 experts here today to give you those perspectives. Now, before I turn to them, I want to remind you of one thing. You have at your tables something that looks like this. Please, at the end of the session, we'd love to keep you informed about Innovation Generation. Fill it out, leave it at your tables, and through some magical process that will happen after this, they will get in touch with you. So with that, I want to turn to Maggie. So Maggie, I have a question for you. You're part of the Innovation Generation. So tell us, first of all, a little bit about how you come to be here today and what pathway you've chosen and how that relates to your future.
I am Maggie Feldman, and I am a senior in high school at Reynoldsburg, and I'm in the East STEM Academy, and I have chosen the advanced manufacturing pathway. And I am in this pathway because I thought it would challenge my mind in ways that I have never expected my mind to be challenged, and it did. And in this pathway, we do a series of design challenges, and design challenges are things that teachers, like problems that teachers will give you. Like one was we had to design a table that is less expensive and sturdier than the ones that our school has. And we would use our resources like the Fab Lab or like the pieces parts that our teachers would give us and come up with a solution. And this doesn't directly relate to what I want to do as being a biomedical engineer or a nurse, but it does help me in the future by giving me skills that I have not had before, and I feel confident that if I go anywhere else, I will be able to face any challenge that is given to me.
Thank you. Very, very good. I'll come back to more of those questions in a second about those skills you're building. Scott, I want to ask you a question. What we're describing here is not the old way of school districts operating. Can you talk a little bit about why this is different?
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be up here. What I think this is different, it's very purposeful. And it is a collaborative that not only involves K-12, but it involves higher ed, and it involves public and private workforce. And that is a collaboration that has always traditionally worked in individual silos. It's also new because it has forced K-12 districts to work together. And we have always worked as independent city-states where we had our own process, course progressions. We didn't interact with each other. In fact, quite often we competed against one another for students and talents and all of those good things. And so it has forced us to all work together for a common regional strategy. And I've always said this is as much an economic strategy as it is an education strategy. And so looking at the pathways that we have developed, the advanced manufacturing pathways, the information technology pathways, the health industry pathways, and the business logistics, working with Columbus State organizations like Jobs for the Future, those are identified as areas in our region that have opportunity for growth and to close some of the skills gaps that have in the workforce caused difficulty finding qualified employees to carry on your organization's mission. So,
thank you, Scott. So let me turn to you, Lynn. First, I'll ask you to say a little bit more about yourself, but reflect on both what Maggie and Scott said about kind of the choices she's making inside of the district that Scott's describing, even though they're in different districts, I know, but also how your life's work has been around entrepreneurialism and its connection with STEM. How does that all work together in Ohio?
Well, I think, first of all, I wouldn't be here if there were not an architect in the audience who saw my name somewhere and recommended me. More broadly, though, however, and I think I can relate this very clearly to what you're talking about, I had about 11 years of experience in 4-H starting as a sixth grader. And the skills I learned in 4-H were communication skills, we're working with mentors, we're working with professionals at Ohio State University and at the county level and so forth. And all of that goes to show that it built confidence in me and the thousands of other students in this state that gave them the leadership and the communication skills that are so important. Now, as far as what we're doing, our Believe in Ohio project, there's a blurb there on your table. We've created a program with support from the General Assembly and the Board of Regents that will dip into what I call the black boxes out there, the entrepreneurial activities that are funded with millions of dollars by the Third Frontier program, for which very few people understand or know, except that's where the jobs are being created. That's where the entrepreneurs are willing to invest and take risks and so forth. So it's connections that are really important there, and we're opening up those boxes through a series of more than 100 video lectures and a mentorship program and competition for commercialization and business plans that the students can get up to $2 million of scholarships and awards. But that business plan process is based on a mapping program. I can share that later. It is a very integrated program. It requires ideas, it requires understanding of budgets, it requires convincing people that you have an idea and it's one that will solve the problems of the world, so to speak.
Thanks, Lynn. I want to talk about the collaboration piece of this. Innovation Generation is a part of a broader program called Pathways to Prosperity, and it is also going on in a number of other states, and we have some help by the Jobs for the Future folks who live in New England but come out here and help as a part of this collective project team. And I asked them last week in anticipation of this, what do they see about this effort that is different than what they see in other places? What can we learn from them, and what can they learn from us? And their response was immediate in the sense that this is the only one that is a grassroots effort that has really emerged from the collaboration that occurred from the compact, the things that happened before the compact that led to a room like this being able to come together with this group not necessarily telling all of you what Innovation Generation is, because many of you actually helped create it. And so the challenge with an issue like this is what I want to ask Scott next, and that is that it's tremendous that we have $14.5 million to get an effort like this started. But that's a single year's worth of funding, and this is a lifetime's worth of work. So how does that work?
Absolutely. What I've tried to share when I have had the opportunity to speak to parents and board members and community members about the pathways is to separate the grant from the philosophy. The grant allowed an infusion of money that allowed us to develop programming, purchase materials, provide training for teachers that may not have ordinarily been in the budget and capable for school districts to do. The philosophy is providing a purposeful secondary progression in education so that students can discover what they're passionate about, what they want to do perhaps when they leave high school that aligns to their aspirations, and find the curriculum that matches that, and at the same time partnering with other industries to meet the needs of our region so that when students graduate, they have a better strategy and are more prepared for what comes after high school and are employable and marketable. Prior to, everything has been either college prep and then graduate and go figure it out, or tech prep, which was for those kids not going to college, and they were separated from our facilities, and they go to very wonderful career and technical programs. Our data will tell us that kids that go to career and technical actually have lower remediation rates and are better prepared for life after high school, even for our highest achieving students who then have to figure it out when they get to college. And most students go to college and have no strategy, no direction, and that is a very expensive strategy for parents. I'm the parent of a 14-year-old freshman, and that's concerning for me. What we want to do is provide focus, purpose, and direction so that students are more successful, more focused, more prepared when they leave our institutions.
Thank you, Scott. This next question is for you, Maggie. So you indicated before that your interest is to become a biomedical engineer, a fantastic choice, by the way. But you're studying in this pathway advanced manufacturing. And from what I recall, and what many of the people here will recall, is manufacturing seems like it's a dying career, not a growing career. So why choose advanced manufacturing if that's what it is?
Well, manufacturing, what usually people think is giving someone the solution to a problem and then someone just building it. But in my pathway, we learn things like gear ratios and how to use fuel cells. And we come up with an idea ourselves, and we find and build our own concept of our solution.
And anything that you're building right now, or anything, something about the robotics team you might want to tell us about?
I am a part of FRC First Robotics Team, and I am the senior project manager. And we have actually a competition in 2 weeks that we have to prepare for. And we had to build a robot that would shoot a huge yoga ball over a 5 to 6 foot truss into a 7 foot high goal. And we had to be able to teach the robots to pass back and forth. So we had to combine all of our skills. It's not just me, it's a series of, there's even like a business side to the team. It's not just building and manufacturing. It's part of going out to the community and going to places like 4-H and helping kids with their programs as well. It's all this huge thing, and it's so exciting.
Yeah.
So.
And how big is your team?
About 60 people, 60 kids.
I think that gets it. So, Lynn, I want to ask you a question about STEM skills. It's one of your passions. So in thinking through the things that Maggie was just describing, where Scott was talking about the various infrastructure pieces, how does all that fit together for this forum?
I'm reminded that a number of years ago, the Academy defined STEM education, and we had 2 key words, one of which came from industry. One is the integration of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and the second is the mastery. The mastery concept came from a vice president, international vice president at Procter & Gamble, who beat on the table and said you have to have mastery of some skills, some knowledge, some technology. So to me, it's the integration that's important between the fields. And you know, I have Google alerts set for all kinds of things. I see lots of stuff on STEM education. Initially, I saw stuff on stem cells. Okay, and now that's kind of fading away. And that was a problem with the word STEM. When you approach certain people, you had to like get beyond the elevator speech to explain it to them. But nevertheless, it's that integration that's important, the use of mathematics. Really, STEM is a bridge to the future, and the pillars that bridge rests on are science and mathematics. It's the interpretation then of engineering and technology that make us go forward.
Thanks, Lynn. Let me ask a question to you, Scott. This program started with 6 pathways in just a number of schools. There are a lot more schools. There are a lot more that we'll learn about it hopefully today and through conversations that follow from here. So is it only the ones that started that will be part of this, or can anybody else join?
I'll tell you, when you go again to the philosophy of the pathways and the collaboration and the partnerships between higher ed, K-12, and the workforce, it expands to all of us. And it's not about charts and graphs and data points that you have in front of you. It's about kids like Maggie who are doing wonderful things, and 150 to 160 more like her in our region that we are trying to prepare to enter our workforce beyond high school. And so everyone has a stake in that. Every community, every business, every higher ed in our region, and every K-12. This is just really the first step of many steps yet to be taken.
Terrific. And then just in Central Ohio, or what happens if someone from Cleveland wants to be a part of this?
Well, they can see how good we're doing down here. But at the end of the day, when you look at the tenets of the compact, this is a statewide strategy. This is something that our General Assembly and our governor has provided for us in forms of $250 million of grant money to be innovative, to meet the needs of our state. So anything that we can do to collaborate in our region or out of our region, that I think that is something that is very valuable for Central Ohio and for the state of Ohio.
Thank you. Let me ask all of you sort of a final question, and then we'll interject some audience comments. So, Maggie, let me start with a question for you. If you were going to give advice to someone younger than you, based on your wise knowledge that you've shared with us today, what would it be?
I would obviously tell them to work hard and study hard and be prepared, especially if you're going into your freshman year, because freshman year is the hardest, and if you can get through freshman year, you can get through anything. So, and also, if they ever have questions, they should definitely tell someone or ask someone as soon as possible, because there's always going to be someone willing to help you and make sure you don't get caught behind.
So one follow-up, if I may. You picked the advanced manufacturing pathway. But what if you made a mistake? What if that wasn't what you wanted to do? Do you worry about that?
I do not worry about that because of the fact of how much it's helped me, and it has challenged me with, like I said, with the design challenges. That has helped my thinking process to make me think about things a lot more and more in depth and think things through instead of, oh, I don't want to do that, I give up, I can't get through this. So
great.
That's helped me a lot.
Thanks. Ask questions,
Yes.
and don't be afraid. I think you hit both of those. Scott, so a couple of things for you. First, what should parents either need to know or do?
I think what would be helpful, and it has changed the dynamic of the dinner table conversation in my home, is our parents asked us, or we ask our parents, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And most students don't have an idea. They'll say doctor or lawyer, or not that there's anything wrong with those lawyers in the house. A lot of industries, they don't know. So the conversation change that I'm having with my son is, what do you like to do? What do you aspire to do? What do you dream to do? And then what we are doing at the educational level is aligning those hopes and aspirations and dreams that those students have and help them find a curricular pathway so that they are introduced to the various industries so that when they do leave us, they have examples, whether they like them. And even if they don't, that is as valuable a thing as going to college and spending $50,000 a year to change a major and figure out, I don't like that. That's very expensive. So we want to guide students and connect school to their aspirations, to what they want to do to help the region and our economy of our state. So the best thing that you can do is get your students and your kids to be self-aware of what they like to do, what they're good at, and how they want to spend their life, and then work in partnership with us as we help them connect that to various industries so that they could spend their life productive and happy.
Great, thanks. And follow-up question is, you're working much more closely now. This is still for you, Scott. Pay attention. He says, he's ready. So, you're also working with Columbus State instructors, with the administration around the distance learning pieces. So this is a new thing as well for districts. So thinking from our standpoint at the college in terms of we need to know about and we need to understand more about working with K-12. What kind of things do colleges need to know to make it easier for you?
Just keep the dialogue open. We live in two different worlds, and we've discovered that. Our language is different, our policies, our governance model is different, and we've discovered that as we've worked together in this grant. But I think the collaboration is good because we feed off of one another. We provide a product for the higher ed to take and move to the next level out into the workforce. So as you said, we have provided an opportunity to connect to Columbus State and eventually other institutions in a non-traditional way by having distance learning labs where we have cameras and microphones and the ability to connect virtually across the web, because a lot of families don't like their children driving to Ohio State or Columbus State or Ohio Dominican or everywhere else. Well, we can connect them and remove that barrier on our campus and provide students with the opportunity to earn early college credit, because we know that students who earn credit while in high school are more likely to continue and be more successful at higher ed. We also are giving students the opportunity to earn industry-level credentials, which doesn't mean I'm not going to college. It often means that I'm more prepared for college, but in the meantime, I have a very marketable skill that makes me employable and desirable out in the workforce, because you just don't go to college to go to school. You go to college to develop a career. Well, that starts with our partnerships with institutions like Columbus State.
Great, thank you. Lynn, now you're up. So the last part of the equation are employers and the taxpayers of the state, but employers first. What do employers need to know about what we're talking about here, and how can they best help?
Well, I think they need to know that there's a curve at which policy or a pathway that policies are established. And they need to have their government relations people in particular aware of what's going on politically in terms of where education is going. And also to be active in their local school boards. I mean, I've resided in Delaware since 1970, and there's a minimal participation from industry, absolutely minimal. I've been around long enough to have gone through 3 iterations of science standards in Ohio. Initially, they were called competency-based, and that was thrown out, then the regular kind of standards. But I can count on one hand with my thumb and little finger folded down the number of industry people who had any competence who were actually at the table. And so they wait until something comes out and it's not what they want. They have to get in there early, just like everybody else gets in there early to put their point across and make it of benefit to industry.
Thanks, Lynn. In a couple of minutes, we're going to ask for audience to ask some of your questions, so I'll ask you to sort of start thinking about those. I want to ask a question that I think is on everybody's mind, may not come up today, but I think it has to come up today. We're in the midst of talking about some enormously positive things at a time when there's a great debate now happening with the Common Core. And how do we keep that from being a distraction and keep moving forward? So I'm going to ask Scott to address that, and help explain kind of the differences in the mythologies that might be out there.
That's a heck of a pool to dip my toe into. At the end of the day, when you look at the industries that we are targeting, they, for the most part, are outside the premises of the core, which are typically math and English standards. We are focusing more around manufacturing, engineering, and science. However, it's good to keep in mind that as reported quite frequently, the Common Core was developed by educators across the nation, both at the higher ed and K-12 level. And they were freely able to be adopted or not adopted by various states. Our state chose to adopt the Common Core. And then all of our 612 school districts had the option to whether adopt those standards or not. I'm in Westerville, we chose to. But keep in mind also that standards are just guidelines for what you believe children should know and be able to do. There is still local control over the curriculum. There is still local control over the resources and materials that teachers are providing, and activities such as the one Maggie is participating in that we are providing our children. So I wouldn't want to get lost in the political 3,000-foot level, because we have total control over what we are doing at the classroom level with your children every day. So that's how I would respond to that.
Thank you. Were you going to chime in?
No.
Okay.
That's something I've learned over the
There
years
you
to
go.
keep my mouth
There
shut.
you go. Okay, well, I'm going to, again, please be thinking about your questions. I'm going to start a couple of questions here, but encourage anyone and everyone to have a chance to get to the microphone. But I want to ask, Maggie, I want to ask you a question. So there are some folks in industry that will say a phrase like, we hire them for hard skills, we fire them for soft skills. And you're sitting up here as one of the most eloquent young ladies I've ever met in front of a group you've never seen before, and they seem reasonably friendly, but that's because you're here. But could you have always done this, or tell us about that?
I honestly could not have done this probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. I used to be small, and once I switched schools, I just didn't talk. I didn't like to do anything. I couldn't go anywhere. And it's only because I had severe anxiety for the longest time. And once I started in this program and I got close with my teachers, I got close with everyone, and it just made me feel comfortable, and it challenged me the way I needed to be challenged, and it opened me up, and I just feel so much better now than I used to. It's amazing.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you. Well, thank you. That's a great story. Let's go ahead now and take some questions. Please announce in advance your name, state your question, and we'll ask that they not be editorialized, but they stay to the point of what you're looking to seek guidance from the panel about. Go ahead.
Well, thank you to the panel for a very good discussion. My name is Mark Reel, and I was interested to start with you, Rich, about the effectiveness of business education partnerships that you're studying, and what can the rest of us learn from that, and perhaps the other panelists have comments.
Thank you. This is an area that's a passion of mine, as many of you know, and the interesting thing about business education partnerships is something that Lynn spoke to before, and that is that both business and education share a common interest in the outcome, which is great students ready to do great work and be great citizens. The challenge is the timescales that they operate on. And so in times gone by, the hope of industry was that education would do a great job. Industry's role was pay taxes to support great schools, and that would work. It doesn't work that way any longer. And the challenge is that as groups get closer together, you begin to understand cultures are different, language is different, timescales are different, priorities are different. And it's a long haul. And so to me, the way that it seems to work is best is when organizations kind of have an understanding that there are differences. It's really easy for us to sit up here and say, let's have as many Maggies as we possibly can. But the opportunity to build a system that does that takes time. And just agreeing on the outcome doesn't mean that you agree on all the things that have to happen in between. What I've found is that if organizations talk about their differences first, what's hard for me to do, what's hard for you to do, what's easy for me to do, in many cases when business education partnerships start, many of the ones that some of these people in this room have been part of, it isn't about the outcome that they find their first thing to do together. We start talking about something, and I find out that you need a database to get something going. I thought I was going to be doing interns for you 4 years from now, but I have a database program. Maybe I can help you with that right now. So the issue is that many of the programs that are needed to start are some of the things where the skill sets exist in industry or in education, and they don't talk about that part of it as much as they should. What's interesting about Pathways is that there are numerous teams that are talking about common processes, common procedures, common ways to communicate, and it's that surfaces, I think, the best in everybody. So thanks for that question. Next.
Hi, David Chesborough, President at COSI, and I think we've heard STEM, innovation. I think in our 50-year history, that's usually how people think of us at COSI, but also we've been in the career development mode for 50 years as well. Thousands of teens every year get experiences like we heard from Maggie or Lynn in terms of developing skills. It just sets the stage for, I've got 2 tables here of our educators, partners from both corporation and education. COSI uniquely sits in a nexus with school systems, with companies, with educational partners, cultural partners, families, teens. What is it that we're making a commitment to make this work? But what is it, just looking for some ideas and some innovative thinking that COSI can do that we don't do today, that it helps advance this with this unique asset that you have here sitting in this community?
Good. Go ahead, Scott. You want to answer that?
Well, first off, I think COSI has always been at the forefront of partnering with schools, whether it's hosting field trips and things of that nature. In fact, I believe I have an email from someone at COSI interested in this program at some point this week, and we'll definitely be in touch. But that's probably the million-dollar question for a lot of businesses in here. What does that mean for us? What are you asking us to do? Because partnering with higher ed and K-12 is easier because we're educators. So when you look at what you may be able to do at the K-12 level, it may be different than some of the things that you're already doing with higher ed. You probably already do internships. You probably already do job shadowing because the students at higher ed are probably more qualified, age appropriate and ready, and right at the cusp of entering your workforce. So what are some things that you could do? Some of the things that COSI has already been doing, like hosting a field trip, sponsoring, funding a field trip, maybe summer externships with teachers so that teachers can enter your world to be sure that what they're doing in the classroom is aligning to what they're preparing students to do. Maybe even forming a panel with members of your industry and teachers that meet pretty regularly for those same topics. Here's what we're doing in the classroom. So when Maggie's instructor, or Maggie's, I'm sorry, dear, my daughter's name is Maddie. Maggie's instructor is teaching her robotics team. An authentic firm could come in and say, from concept to design to implementation to production, here's how we would do it, so that they are actually getting real world experience. Those type of opportunities to get involved at the K-12 level, sharing your resources. A lot of times industries surplus stuff all the time. Well, having the ability to work with authentic business materials and supplies would be very valuable. That would be fairly easy for you to do. And there's 1,000 things that you could do, but those are just some, a way to get into the K-12 world, and then we continue to move from there.
Good, thanks. And Lynn, can I ask you the same, to also address the same question?
Yeah, I can't really add much to that, other than a very specific kind of recommendation is to work with our Believe in Ohio program that we're filming many of the entrepreneurs out there, and there'll be free online courses on Facebook or YouTube, on iTunes University and the state system iLearn. So those are free and open to anybody that wants to get on there and take them. But you might build upon the contacts we've made with the various groups in Central Ohio or getting third frontier grants and other kinds of funding. Make sure that the public knows about that, public being those people that visit COSI as well as children. The grandparents are there a lot too. And that's one way of sustaining interest in these areas. Tremendous number of companies out there doing things that people have no clue. They're black boxes, and they're fascinating, and that gives inspiration to students like, man, I'd love to do that, or, you know, here's how it works, or talk about a product that somebody makes the stuff that goes into the product, and you wouldn't have the reflective stop sign if it weren't for nanotechnology, you know, things like that.
Thanks, Lynn. Another question.
Yes, my name is John McKnight, and I work for Reeves Auto Body here in Columbus. And being on the hiring end, I can really tell you the importance of workforce development is huge, and really applaud all of your efforts for trying to boost that. My question is for Maggie, or at least would like her to address it first before anyone else would. The flyer on the table says that one of the state initiatives is to increase secondary education to 60% of high school graduates, or I probably misphrased that, but something like that. Maggie, from your perspective, from a student from inside, is this program strictly college prep? Or, I mean, Scott talked about this some, that the skills could apply to other things as well, but from a student's perspective, does it feel like this is strictly aiming me at college, or do they make you equally as aware that these skills could also be applied to some fields that don't necessarily require a college education?
A lot of it is college prep.
Thank you.
Because of just the fact that they're trying to get us ready for what we're going to be doing in the future. And a lot of it is like, it's shaped like a college class. Most of them are. the speed of our classes that we're in, because we have semester-long classes, it's going as fast as it would, and it's also giving us skills and credentials that we could go out, like when we're in college, we could go out and get a job that's more where we fit, instead of like going to Dairy Queen or Kroger, which are fine jobs, but if we could go into something that we learned and went through, it would also be good to start with that too.
Thanks. And if I could, I want to add one other point that I mentioned this in my opening remarks. In the designated industry sectors, health, advanced manufacturing, business, logistics, and IT, at Columbus State, 21 certificates and industry credentials available for students to initiate and earn by the end of high school graduation, with the idea that, as Maggie said, the hope is to never cut off an option prematurely. So if Maggie wants to move on, she should be able to do that. On the other hand, there are plenty who want to move immediately to the workforce, and the ability to move in with recognized credentials that acknowledge the skills they've learned is critical, and that's all part of this program. Next question.
Hi, my name is Caroline McKinnis. I'm director at Fab Ed at TIES. And Maggie, I don't mean to pick on you, I'm sorry. But you mentioned the use of the Fab Lab as a part of your coursework at Reynoldsburg, and I'd love to hear more. So thank you.
I was actually an intern in the Fab Lab, so that was like my internship. Everyone had to have an internship, and I chose that. And I got to work on projects like designing a scale model of the library so the kids across the way at Summit Elementary could figure out, oh, we could put this table here and this table here, and then at the end of the year, because they had a museum project with all of these, they had a huge telephone booth, and they don't know where that would fit if they moved this table, and we made them a scale model, and they took pictures as the kids were spending days and weeks trying to decide what would be the best way to put this together. But the Fab Lab is a series of machines. It started at MIT, and now it's branched to us, and we also have a mobile Fab Lab now. So when we go to places like the Tomato Festival or other school districts and show off our Fab Lab, we have a CNC mill, a ShopBot, 2 3D printers, a vinyl cutter, and a laser etcher, and we use these a lot. And some other projects we have we had to number doors for emergency reasons at other school districts, and the Fab Lab is open, and that was just my internship. If you are in a class like I'm also in called SolidWorks, you're figuring out how to design things like water bottles or charms for a bracelet, or things like a table, if the design you could come up for a table, just stuff like that, using the programs that work the machines. And it's basically teaching you how to program these programs to be able to print what you want or want to design. So.
Thanks, Maggie. Real quickly, you mentioned mobile Fab Labs. Scott, do you want to just say 2 minutes about what a mobile Fab Lab is and what capacity that Central Ohio will have?
Yeah, Fab being short for Fabrication Laboratory. As Maggie expertly outlined, it is industry-level equipment. And we all don't have the capacity, perhaps, to have one in-house or static. So we have a mobile, 30-foot long, 8x8 trailer, beautifully designed with our Innovation Generation branding that 9 different districts will have. And we are anticipating getting those on September 5th and having an event on September 9th where we really kind of show those off to Central Ohio so that students in multiple buildings reaching, for us, we're doing it in our 4 middle schools, can reach hundreds and hundreds of students to do projects, age-appropriate projects like this, so that they can have a taste of the things that Maggie is doing and maybe an interest in those industries. So we will have one, 8 other districts will have one, and they will be on display in a variety of communities, I'm sure.
Great. Thanks, Scott. I think we're going to have time for about one more question. Let's see. Go ahead, please.
Well, this is a comment. I wear many hats. I'm a librarian for DeVry University and a big school in the city, and I'm a parent. I want to say thank you for this program. My son is in 11th grade at the Columbus Downtown High School, and if you've never taken a tour of that high school, it's wonderful. He just loved it. He spends in the computer lab, all morning and that with his, with the kind of student he is, he can thrive there. So thank you for your program. And I talked to Dr. Good, and thank you for that program. it's wonderful. So I'm hoping that those collaborations can keep going. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll do one more question, and then I think, or you want to shut me down?
I would like to ask the last question.
You go for
please,
it.
if I may. All right, so we've heard all about the jobs of the future and the industry sectors and that sort of thing. And this will be a little exercise for each of you. Tell us what exactly these jobs are. If you could name some specific ones, maybe the top 10 or something along those lines. But everybody take a crack at it, have some fun with it.
Good.
What are the jobs?
Okay, we're gonna go right to left on this one. So, Lynn, you go first.
Well, I think if you look at the investments that are being made by Third Frontier and other investors that come along with that money, you've got areas such as advanced manufacturing we've already talked about. Probably the most difficult area is in the materials area. Virtually everything requires some kind of material. So it's the nanotechnology, the use of materials, and the environmental concerns related to those kind of materials. They're not in isolation. There's controversy over some nanotechnology. Certainly in the biomedical area, that Ohio in general is a very strong state in terms of biomedical research, application, and so forth. One of our late members invented Benadryl, okay? There's a good example there. One of our members established a Cleveland Clinic, George Cryle. So biomedical areas, advanced manufacturing, something that's coming up here in a week or two, energy storage. We talk about alternative energy. We talk about wind and solar and whatever. You have to store it somehow, okay? You can't just depend on the wind blowing the whole time. So those are really important areas. All of those require strong math skills. They require interdisciplinary work. The Believe in Ohio program doesn't focus on biology, chemistry, physics. It focuses on the applied areas where the jobs will be, for at least the projected jobs. That's my take on it.
Great, thanks. Scott?
And for us, Westerville is in the leadership role of the health pathway, and students in our health pathway can take coursework and progress towards 3 specific industry credentials: pharmacy technician, clinical lab assistant, and state-tested nurse's assistant. Some of our health partners, which we are partnered with 9 other districts, have EKG certifications, phlebotomy certifications, and in our conversations with health systems around Central Ohio, they've indicated the amount of overtime that they're paying, or they said for every 1 phlebotomist we have, we need 5. And so those are some of the jobs that we are preparing our students to enter right out of high school and can continue in a higher rate if they want, but they're marketable right now.
Thanks. Maggie?
I don't know if this is exactly an answer to your question, but things that my brothers went into mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering. I have triplet brothers, so 2 of them went into the same thing but went to different schools because they look exactly alike, so they kind of wanted to split apart. But I think with the robotics team, a lot of the seniors went into engineering and different types of engineering, and the program that my advanced manufacturing, a lot of them went through. So that prepared them for pretty much any type of engineering, because all the different kinds of problems that we get applies to different areas of engineering. So it prepares us for more than just one area. So.
Great, thank you. So let me take one last stab at it, and then I'll turn it back over to Todd. So you asked what are the names of these jobs, and one thing that I know is that the names of the top jobs today didn't even exist 12 or 14 years ago. If you went home and said, I'm going to be a web designer, in 1992, you were knitting or you were doing something else, right? The thing that I would think about is sort of what Maggie just said, is that most jobs are going to be hybridized things. I met a young student that graduated a couple of years ago from Metro Early College High School that had a love of writing and a love of science. And I said, well, what do you think you want to do with that? He says, I want to be a journalist that writes authentically and educates the population about what science really is and how to interpret global warming. He invented that job, right? In his mind, that job existed. And I think that's sort of what is being talked about here, is the combinations of things, especially in science, happen at the interfaces between odd disciplines. And that's where we are here. So every bit of what's being trained, when we can see where it applies in real life, becomes another job.
Thank you. I want to say, gentlemen, I appreciate everything you've had to say today, but Maggie, you have stolen the show. Absolutely. She had the nerve to tell me she was nervous before she got on stage. Thank you for being here today. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. We encourage you to continue the conversation in the lobby over coffee and cookies. Remember that you can view and share all of our forums on Columbus TV Channel 3, statewide on WOSU, through the Ohio Channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Once more, thank our sponsors, J.P. Morgan Chase, and our speakers, Rich Rosen, Scott Reeves, Lynn Elfner, and the incomparable Maggie Feldman.